Welcome back, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. I arrived at 0500 hours. Still dark, but DC never truly sleeps. The air was sharp, heavy with late winter damp, the kind that seeps into the knees even before the sun rises. I parked in the restricted lane near East Executive Avenue, logged in with the forward unit, and started the walk through security, same as usual. Rifle case strapped tight to my back, carbine across my chest, sidearm snug under the plate carrier. The motorcade gates were already locked, floodlights pouring across the north lawn like we were setting up for a nighttime broadcast. But this wasn't for show. The air crackled. You could feel tension, not in the air itself, but in how people moved. Shorter steps, less chatter. Across Pennsylvania Avenue, the crowd was already packed shoulder to shoulder at Lafayette Square, despite the hour. They had been there since last night, maybe longer. Some camped in their vehicles, others marched in from nearby hotels and neighborhoods. You could tell who came for politics and who came for war just by how they held their signs. Some read about freedom, medical tyranny, lost jobs, border control. Others were cruder, threats scrawled with permanent marker, zip-tied to broom handles. A handful wore helmets. A few had gas masks slung across their backs. Not random chaos. There was coordination in parts of that crowd. It didn't look like a spontaneous protest. It looked like a demonstration with teeth. It started 2 weeks earlier, when the rumors of a new flu strain hit social media before the health agencies could even frame a statement. Then came lockdown orders in the western states, checkpoints around airports, delayed flights, rerouted trains. People lost jobs overnight. One cable channel ran with the story about federal shelters being stocked early, and it spiraled. The narrative split. One side said the government was hiding something. The other side accused them of doing too little. Both pointed at the same building, the one we were guarding. I was attached to a federal response unit from Joint Task Force Capitol Shield. Not active duty military anymore, but not civilian either. My file said I was a Tier 1 designated sniper. Background in asymmetric ops overseas. Prior deployments in Kandahar, Fallujah, then later stateside under Homeland Security. I had run operations during the Seattle riots, had covered high-value extractions during the Cascadia blackout, and I'd stood overwatch during the 2-week chemical panic in Baltimore. I followed orders. I didn't run my mouth. That's why they called me for this. My assignment was a steel overwatch tower bolted into scaffolding above the East Maintenance Building. Engineers threw it together the night before under portable floodlights. Looked stable enough, but it groaned under weight and swayed with the wind like anything rushed into place. I climbed it anyway. Top rung felt cold through my gloves. As I stepped onto the platform, I felt the entire thing shift under me. Just a half-inch maybe, but enough to make me test the lashings with my boot before I set the rifle down. I clipped in, unpacked, racked the bolt, and laid the long gun across the sandbag rest. Lewis was already up top, younger than me by 15 years, clean-cut, sharp-eyed, but not green. He had time in a JSOC recon team before this, but never liked door-kicking. Preferred glass to steel. He was my spotter for this assignment. Didn't talk much. Just called wind and range, logged shots, and kept to his corner. He tied a piece of tape to the tower rail to track crosswind and checked it every few minutes like he was watering a plant. Not high-tech, but it worked. The first standing order was observation only, crowd control, not engagement. Our job was to monitor, report, and, only if a lethal threat emerged, cover the gates and outer cordon. Command's words during briefing were clear. This is not a war zone. These are American citizens, not enemy combatants. This isn't Afghanistan. This isn't Syria. Do not escalate. Still, we knew how this could go. We'd seen it before. 1,000 people chanting turns into 2,000 pushing. If one line collapses, if one badge gets pulled into the crowd, it changes fast. So I stayed on the glass and watched. Through the scope, I saw the early light break across Pennsylvania Avenue. Saw scarves pulled tight over mouths. Foam letters glued to signs. Cell phones raised above heads, recording everything. as if someone on the other side would care more if it ended up with hashtags and grainy subtitles. A man in a black hoodie moved up front and climbed onto a traffic barrier, held a bullhorn in one hand and pointed with the other like he was conducting. His voice came through the wind in bits, just enough to catch the rhythm. The line around him pressed forward, shoulders against steel fence. Riot officers held the barrier line in full armor, helmets fogged, shields already scuffed. They braced, didn't move, just waited. One gave a signal, small tilt of the head, barely noticeable unless you've worn that gear before. No rocks, no Molotovs, not yet. But something in the body language had changed. Not just rage, not just disobedience. Some of them looked off. It wasn't obvious at first. People screamed, gestured, pushed, normal for a protest, even a heated one. But a few individuals, barely half a dozen, I watched them lean too far forward, limbs stiff, not braced like they were getting ready to fight or run, just wrong. Movement without balance, focus without blinking. At the time, I didn't know what I was seeing. No one did. I called it in as odd behavior in front ranks. Lewis saw it too. He tracked one guy in a soaked yellow parka who twitched his head side to side like he was trying to clear water from his ears, over and over. Then he suddenly ran full speed into the fencing. No words, no warning, just charged. Slammed headfirst into metal, bounced back, got up again. Blood ran from his nose, and he did it again. Still, no one fired. We weren't allowed to. Crowd behavior was unstable, yes, but the rules hadn't changed. They were still civilians, still citizens. The morning drags. I log counts, watch the edges, and keep track of runners who move oddly through the crowd. Lewis calls out shirt colors, hats, backpacks. I measure distance off known markers. The snipers on neighboring towers check in every 10 minutes. The net sounds calm and bored. I breathe slow and steady, nothing fancy. The rifle sits ready with the safety on. I try not to think about what this would look like if it goes wrong. Near noon, something changes. A woman on a concrete planter staggers and drops. People around her step back, then a few lean in to help. She snaps at someone's forearm and holds on. The person jerks away and falls between legs and boots. The crowd ripples in confusion, then anger. Someone throws a bottle at the police line. Someone else hurls a folding chair. Officers move shields up. A loudspeaker orders dispersal. The chant loses rhythm and turns into 100 voices giving orders to no one. Possible medical in the crowd. North side of Lafayette. I say on the net. I track her through the scope. Her mouth is wet. She tries to stand and slips. A man helps her up. She lurches and bites his cheek. He shoves her back and shouts. People peel away and try to run, but there is nowhere to go. The barrier holds them in. Pressure builds and the rail flexes. Officers brace and hammer the posts to reset the pins. The first sprint starts without warning. A group of men jump the barrier near the corner by the statue. Two are fast. One is faster than fast. Their heads do not move like normal runners. Their arms pump hard and stiff. An officer breaks from the line to cut them off and gets rolled under boots. The fast one leaps and lands on shields. Hands pull him off. He keeps clawing. I do not fire. I keep the crosshair on empty air and then on the bigger one in the black hoodie. He turns his face up toward the tower and grins with spit on his chin. I feel nothing in my chest and everything in my hands. I wait for the call. Hold fire, command says. Less lethal first. Less lethal hits the front row. Rubber rounds pop. The crowd buckles and surges. The woman who bit the man is up again. Her jaw works without pattern. The man with the torn cheek hits someone with the bullhorn and tries to push out. A different fast runner climbs the barrier and drops on the lawn side. He sprints toward a maintenance truck. He is not looking at the building or the flag. He is zeroed in on a crewman. He hits that worker and drives him down. Arms flail, feet kick. The person on top hammers his head into the grass. The crewman does not move after the third strike. Sniper 3, you have a green light to protect blue and green near your sector, command says. I flip the safety, settle the stock, and put the dot high on the fast runner's ear. Lewis gives me wind. 2 clicks right for the cross breeze coming off the street. I shoot once. The fast runner stops moving. The crewman under him rolls away on his side and crawls behind the truck with a dragging foot. The shot changes the sound of the day. A line of people in the crowd points at the tower. Phones aim up. A chant restarts. But it is not about freedom anymore. It is rage pointed at us. I breathe and reset. My palms feel slick on the stock even with gloves. More sprinting, more jumps. The barrier on the north edge collapses. Officers try to reform behind a second line of fencing. A thin group on the south side holds, but the press is relentless. Less lethal is not enough. Command authorizes live fire for anyone who crosses the inner line with violent action. The first bursts from the ground guns sound like hot tin ripping. People scatter. Some push forward anyway. The ones I keep seeing through the scope are the ones who move straight at us. Eyes wrong, mouths working, hands clawed. I fire. Lewis calls hits, distances, and movement left and right. The day closes with smoke hanging low from burned trash and flares. Helicopters cycle in and out of the south lawn, moving boxes and personnel. Engineers roll in heavy sections of prefab barrier and bolt them together under portable lights. The hammering rings across the grass. Each strike sets dogs barking in the distance and pulls more shapes into side streets. I clean the chamber. I wipe the bolt. I drink warm water and try to swallow without tasting metal. Night is broken into small fights. We put down 6 more that move fast and ignore commands. Medics wheel out injured officers. A few people in the crowd do not seem to feel baton strikes or foam rounds. A man with blood on his shirt climbs a light pole and drops onto the police side, then runs at a full sprint into a shield like it is not there. He drops when 4 batons hit his legs in quick sequence, but he is back up in seconds. I take him when he grabs a rifle sling. I watch him fall and roll. He tries to stand again even with nothing in his eyes. I shoot a second time. He stops. At 2 in the morning, a small team tries to cut through the outer barrier by the square. 3 move with coordination, not like panicked people. They hold hands and take short steps. 1 carries bolt cutters. The others shield him with plywood. The move is not random. I call it out. The nearest ground unit shifts and charges, but the 3 break and sprint in different directions. 2 run into batons. The one with cutters slides under a truck and vanishes. 5 minutes later, the magnetic lock on a service gate fails and clicks open and shut. A figure runs into the shadows, then back out with a stretcher. He is not saving anyone. He is using it as a shield. I shoot when he swings it at an officer. He drops. The gate is secured again. At dawn, the order set changes. Radios crackle with a new voice. The briefing is short. A pathogen is spreading. It alters behavior quickly. Contact with saliva and blood is high risk. The word infected comes through for the first time. New rules of engagement are clear. Anyone with infected behavior beyond commands to stop is to be treated as a lethal threat. Officers will not attempt wrist holds or ground tackling unless fully shielded and in teams of 4. I copy it down and mark the time. It does not feel like relief. It feels like a door closing. Yesterday, we were told to watch citizens. Today, we are told to treat citizens as carriers. The crowd still chants, but the noise has a ragged edge. I can see exhaustion in faces. I also see eyes that do not blink. A woman stares at the fence for a full minute without moving, then sprints into it and tries to push her face through the grid. Her skin rubs raw on metal. She does not react. Officers pull her off with a pole and rope, drag her clear, and tie her to a light post with her own belt so she cannot hurt anyone while medics work. She tries to bite. I keep the crosshair on her hands in case she gets loose. The second day ends with the outer streets clogged by abandoned cars and trash. The barricade construction doubles. Steel goes up where there was open lawn. Scissor lifts move in arcs, raising pre-built towers. The sound of diesel is never gone. Rotors thump. A cargo helicopter drops heavy pallets of water and ammunition near the south entrance and leaves. Another brings fuel bladders. Engineers scream instructions over motors. The racket pulls more infected from the city. We see them at intersections. Some run with balance and intent. Some move erratically, arms out, eyes on whatever makes the most noise. On the third day, the line breaks in 3 places before noon. One breach is near my sector. A cluster of fast-infected vaults a police cruiser, uses the hood to jump the rail, and barrels into a squad changing shields. I take 2 clean shots before the squad gets crushed. It is not enough. The third one hits an officer square and drives him backward. The gun flips and skitters into the grass and stops at my sight picture. I put a round into the runner's temple. He drops hard across the officer's legs. The officer pushes free and crawls back. He keeps crawling even when a baton hits his boot and a voice tells him to stand. He cannot stand. 2 pull him to his feet and push him behind the line. I track all of it with dry eyes. I have to blink by force. We get a quiet hour. Then an armored truck shows up with a welding crew. They start tying the inner fence panels with steel cord. The grinder screens throw sparks. The light is bright even in day. The shriek cuts through bone. In minutes we have movement in every direction. The north side looks like a wave made of people. The south side churns with smaller groups darting in odd patterns. The crew keeps working until an officer slaps the metal with a gloved hand and points. They shut the grinder off. The wave slows, but does not stop. A runner makes it onto the lawn by using a rolled carpet as a ramp over a crushed section. He is thin and fast and keeps his head low. He makes for a cable run, not for any person. He tries to pull a junction box off the wall. It is not random. I take him. His body shakes the cable tray. Something sparks, then dies. We lose lights on one corner for a minute before the backup kicks in. The engineer below me curses and throws a wrench. No one looks up. No one has time. By late afternoon, the radio fills with reports of infected who do not rush straight at noise, but cut across open ground to hit a weakness. A crew stacking sandbags leaves a narrow path by accident. 3 hit that path from the side and push through before anyone can close it. A marine unit stops them, but not before a lance corporal gets a bite through a torn sleeve. The medic runs a tourniquet, tapes plastic over the wound, and walks him back with a hand on the back of his neck, not like a friend, but like a guide dog handler keeping a leash short. He does not look around. He looks straight ahead at the door. Sunset on the third day looks red with haze and burned plastic, and I hate that it looks this way because it tells every infected for miles where to go. I eat a cold meal pack with shaking fingers I pretend are steady. Lewis reads off inventory. We are fine on rifle rounds. We are light on carbine magazines. We have enough water for 1 more day if we stretch it. The ladder creaks as a runner brings more up. The runner hands me a crate and looks at Lewis too long. Lewis nods and turns away. The runner does not leave. I tell him to go and he finally goes. I make a mental note of his patch and number. I never see him again. 4th day, early, the president departs. I do not see the face. I see the shape of the motorcade snake under the south portico and into the tunnel. I see the helicopter lift off and vanish into low cloud. Radios ask for confirmation. The answer is clipped. Leadership moving to redundant secure locations. Nothing else. The front line does not get quiet orders. The front line gets, keep your sector stable and conserve ammunition, and report intelligent infected immediately. Mid-morning, something new. A group of 6 approaches from the east behind a rolling dumpster. The move is controlled. The dumpster bumps along the curb and the 6 stay tight, using the metal box as a moving shield. One peeks around it with a length of pipe. He tests the fence for flex. Another crouches and shoves wedges under the wheels to hold it in place. An officer aims and shouts. No response. I take the one with the pipe. He falls, and the rest scatter. 2 do not run far. They go low and crawl into a hedge gap. I call it out. A team moves to flank, but these 2 pop up behind the team and hit the last man. The team turns and fights hard. It is messy and short. My shot is blocked by friendlies. When it clears, those 2 are down. They do not look like mindless rushers. That sits wrong. I do not say it aloud. The net is a line of last names and street directions. Push them right, one Marine captain says. No, left, left. Someone screams into the transmitter and keeps screaming until a sergeant takes the radio and says the team is still operational and needs tourniquets. A medic says there are no more tourniquets. Someone says use belts. Someone else says use strips from the ambulance seat. I see a belt wrapped twice around a thigh and pulled through a piece of pipe. The leg goes pale and the flow slows. The medic gives a thumbs up and moves on without a word. Lewis takes a scratch during a resupply run at dusk. He says it is nothing. I clean it with alcohol, tape a dressing, and tell him to report it. He says no. I report it myself. Command says to monitor for fever and behavior change, and if any appear, isolate and escalate. Those are the words. The meaning is obvious. Lewis looks at the dark and does not argue. We sit back to back for an hour, both awake, both listening. Overnight, the towers on the west side collapse. The radio calls start with short bursts of position reports and end in one long stream of shouting as the tower joints give, and the structure walks itself down in a series of bangs. The last sound is metal dragging steel. The net goes quiet. A minute later, a different voice reaches out for anyone in the west sector. Nothing answers. A major says, "Mark it as lost." I put a pencil line through that sector on my map and keep my face blank. Fifth day blows by and jumps. A helicopter tries to get a pallet of ammunition onto the lawn. It hovers and starts to lower the net. A rush of infected pours out from beneath trees where we did not expect them. The rotor wash makes trash and dust fly. The downwash spins a banner into the crew door, and someone has to slam that door shut. The pilot holds it, and then a shape leaps from the top of a truck and lands on the skid. The helicopter tilts. The pilot punches power, but the skid scrapes the grass and the load swings. The hook lets go. The pallet smashes and throws metal boxes everywhere. The helicopter yaws and drifts. It clears the tree line and disappears. We hear a hit a few blocks away. No one cheers, no one curses. We do not have the breath for it. We get into a rhythm. I pick targets that threaten structure. I leave the mass of writhing bodies at the fence to the ground guns and the shotgunners on the catwalk. I focus on the ones that climb, problem solve, or lead. The climbers use bent rebar, fold out ladders, and even roll up old tarps to soften razor wire. The problem solvers shove a dead car under the fence and climb the hood to get over. The leaders break a path with smart angles and simple tools. I take those when I can. When I cannot, I mark them and call their direction. By late afternoon, Lewis starts to lose track of counts. He asks me to repeat simple calls. He breathes through his mouth even when he is fine. I press the back of my hand to his forehead. He is warm. He does not argue when I tell him to lie down. He tries to stand, wobbles, and sits again with his back to the radio case. He drinks water without swallowing properly and coughs it up. He looks at me and tries to smile. I look away. I watch him through the night and keep the rifle close. He sleeps and jerks awake in short snatches. Near dawn, he starts to mutter to someone who is not here. He reaches for the rifle and then pulls his hand back like he touched a stove. He breathes like the air is thick. He asks for his daughter, then stops talking. I call medical and get silence. The channel is blown with requests and alarm tones. I key a different net and call again. A private voice says what I already know. Isolate, escalate, secure your post. Lewis wakes in full daylight and looks at me for a long time. He knows. He asks for the headset. I put it on him and key the net. He says his name, his post, his time on station, and his condition. He says he understands the order. He asks permission to hand control to me and step down. The voice on the other end is clipped and careful. Permission granted. He sets the headset down and rests his hands on his knees. He tells me to do it straight. No nonsense, no mess. I nod and do not speak. I place the sidearm on his hand and let him feel the weight. He shakes his head and pushes it back. He asks me to be quick. I tell him to focus on the horizon. He keeps his eyes there. I do what he asked. I set him down and cover him with a blanket from the medbag. Then I sit alone and keep firing. For the rest of the fifth day, the world narrows to the scope and the ladder. A corporal climbs up with a bandage on his ear and a look like he left something behind. He hands me water and 3 magazines and leaves without a word. A staff sergeant from the catwalk asks if I have eyes on a gap near the northeast corner. I shift and call it clear for the moment. He says thanks and is gone. No extra words. no empty comfort. Night of the 5th blends into morning of the 6th with no real break. The lawn is not green anymore. It is brown and black and stamped flat. The fences look bent and tired. The towers look tired. The men and women in armor look like the armor is holding them up instead of the other way around. We all stink of sweat, smoke, and old food. No one complains. Voices on the net get shorter. Orders get simpler. Fewer call signs answer roll. An officer grabs the ladder rail and hauls himself up to the platform. He brings a courier pouch full of papers. He hands me one page with a stamp on it. The words are heavy and simple. Hold your post. Conserve ammunition. The White House must not fall on camera. I read it twice and nod. He asks how long I can hold with my current load. I tell him 2 more days if I pace shots and if the ground guns keep doing work. He pats the rail and climbs back down. I watch him cross the yard with his head low. Late morning of the 6th, a pack of fast infected makes a straight run at a service gate that should be locked. The lock hangs twisted and useless. Someone broke it earlier during a push and no one had hands free to fix it. The pack hits the gap, pushes through, and flows like water into a low corridor used by maintenance carts. I switch to the carbine and pour fire into the mouth of the tunnel, while a squad sprints across the open to block the other end. They slam a dumpster into place and chain it to a pipe. The pack hits the dumpster and climbs. It shakes. The pipe bends. The chains groan. I shoot the ones that get high enough to reach the lip. The squad holds. The pipe creaks and then holds. We breathe again without saying so. In the afternoon, a rumor crawls across the net. The cabinet has moved out. A second site is activated. The phrase continuity comes through 3 times. Someone says the vice president is already airborne. Someone else says the chief is in a tunnel. No one says where. We hear heavy doors close through open mics. We hear generators kick in. We hear someone say a prayer half under breath and cut the transmit key when he realizes he is live. As the sun drops, a voice I have not heard before takes the net. He is calm and flat. He says, shift to priority fire on climbers and organizers. He says, do not waste rounds on the mass at the fence if a machine gun has it. He says, intelligent infected show up in pairs and small clusters. He says units are to tag and track those if possible, and remove them first. I nod to no one. This is already how I have been shooting for a day and a half. We get a gift near dusk. A short convoy of pickups with wire racks on the beds and steel mesh on the windows slips through a gap on the north side and drives straight toward a thin point in our line. The drivers are not our people. They look like locals who slapped armor on their rigs and came to help, or loot, I cannot tell which. They honk and wave rifles out the windows and try to pull a cluster of infected away from a weak fence. It half works. The infected chase the noise for 100 yards, then split and come back in 2 streams. One stream cuts the convoy off and pulls a driver out when he stalls. The other stream punches into a low spot near a power box. I pick off the front rank of that stream, and the ground crew closes the hole. The convoy backs out in a panic. One truck gets stuck on a section of collapsed barrier and spins its tires. The driver revs. The engine smokes. A Marine runs up, smashes the rear light with a baton, and points left. The driver figures it out, rocks the truck, and gets free. He does not look back. At full dark, the towers on the south lawn start to take hits from below. The infected climb and swing on the cross-bracing. The bolts shriek. The sandbags on the platforms shift. I strap in tighter and check the welds within reach. A captain on the ground shouts for everyone on the tower to rebalance weight. We all move toward the center. The motion makes the tower sway. We hold still and breathe through clenched teeth. The bolts settle with soft pops. For the moment, we are still standing. Near midnight, a burst of shots tears the silence from the west. Someone fires full auto for too long. A sergeant cuts in on the net and tells that shooter to control the trigger. The shooting stops. Then a voice says the west catwalk is gone. The infected used a fallen tree to make a ramp. That detail lands in my head like a nail getting tapped in. That is not a random swarm. That is a use of environment. That is a switch in the kind of enemy we face. I call in the report with the words as simple as I can make them. Command acknowledges and sends a note to all sectors. Watch for objects moved under fences. Watch for fallen trees. Watch for cars used as ramps. On the 7th morning, the air is still. The silence is wrong. It means the infected are not moving yet, or it means the ones who are moving are doing it where we cannot see. I glass the hedges, the walkways, the monuments. I see faces pressed into chain link. I see hands test weak spots. I see blood on concrete dried to a dark stain. I do not see big pushes. I do not trust it. An encrypted brief comes across the net. Leadership is complete on evacuation. That is the phrase. Complete on evacuation. There is no follow-on. We are to hold the grounds until relieved or until ammunition is gone. The exact sentence is read twice. Hold until ammunition is gone. The White House must not fall on camera. The person reading does not add any comment. The line clicks off. No one says much after that. We all know what that order means for the ones left on the line. I start counting rounds. I set aside 2 magazines of carbine for emergencies only. I line up rifle rounds in 10s. I take an extra belt of medkit strips and tie them to the rail as markers, 1 for each 10 rounds burned. I plan my exit in my head even as I plan my shots. I run the route through the maintenance shaft under my platform, past the generator room, into the service corridor that runs to the old tunnel. I have not seen the tunnel door open once in 7 days. I trust the idea of it more than the reality. I tell myself that is fine. Plans help even when doors are locked. Morning comes with one clean push that looks like a last throw of a losing team. The infected hit from 3 sides at once. The machine guns chew the first ranks. Shotgunners on the catwalk put slugs into anyone who makes it over the top rope. The ones who rise after head hits get numbers called in red. Pairs of fast ones slip through gaps and hit legs and throats. Marines pivot and drag their wounded back without looking at faces. Medics dump kits and move on when a wound is too deep. No crying, no pleading, no talk outside of short words that mean move or stop or pull. I go to work on climbers. One reaches a window frame and swings on it like a gymnast to get angle. I take the shot mid-swing. He drops and 2 behind him climb over his back without looking. Another finds a length of webbing and uses it to steady a climb up a smooth wall. I cut the line with a shot. He falls and pops right back up with a broken foot twisted under him and still tries to climb. He cannot. He tries anyway until a baton crushes his hand. He still tries with the other hand. I stop him. By midday, the neighboring posts are not checking in. I call for Sniper 2 and get nothing. I call for Sniper 4 and get bursts of static and a few words. Lost platform, moving lower, too many. A blast rolls across the lawn and shakes dust off the tower rails. Someone threw a charge too close. Another blast follows, smaller and farther. On the net, a colonel says, all remaining positions are to set demo on the way out if the order to fall back comes. No one asks when that order might come. We are past the point of polite questions. Early afternoon, I see the flagpole at the center line tilt. Infected climb the base and pull ropes. The flag slides down and tangles. 2 Marines try to cut them off. They get there too late. The pole tilts another degree. The image sits in my head and will not move. I put a round into the head of the one pulling the line. He drops. Another grabs the rope. The pole tilts again. I cannot spare 2 rounds for a symbol when a squad at the east gate is getting flanked by a trio of fast ones. I switch and take those 3 instead. A message pings on my handset, stripped down to plain text to cut through the mess. Sniper 3, you will remain until ammunition is depleted. It is signed with a code that I know ties back to a room deep under concrete. I stare at the words for one slow count of 5. I think about the trucks that left last night. I think about the quiet under the south portico. I think about the sound of that first woman's teeth on a stranger's arm. I set the handset down and look through the scope again. The next hour is simple and hard. I shoot only when a shot saves a gap or a life. I do not take distance shots on the edges. I let the ground guns carry the mass. I save rounds for organizers and climbers. I take a fast one who is clearly lining up a long jump from the top of a car to a balcony rail. I put a round through an arm when it reaches for a rifle sling. I cut a hammer hand at the right moment to keep a lock intact. I ignore the ones pounding their faces into steel. I would run out of rounds in 10 minutes if I looked at that too long. My last neighboring sniper goes quiet near 3 in the afternoon. The voice that replaces him is a private on the ground. He shouts for more rounds and more hands, and then gets pulled off the net by someone who still has rank. The silence that follows is worse than any scream. I mark the last tower as silent. I do the math without paper. It is me, and maybe one more somewhere I cannot see. That is the math. I open my small demo pouch and lay out what I have. 2 small charges meant for door hinges, 1 tripline flare, 1 smoke can, 2 fragmentation grenades. Nothing fancy. I tape a charge to the inner face of the tower's support at a stress point I can see. I set a length of time fuse I measure against my forearm. I tape the second charge lower on the opposite leg. I tie the trip flare to the ladder base with thin line and drape the line across the first rung. It is not elegant. It will throw light and panic into whatever climbs after me and buy me seconds. That is all I need. I check the maintenance hatch under the platform. It opens. The hinges groan. The air below smells of dust, oil, and old hot wires. I nod once to no one. The plan still lives. I set the grenades within reach of the hatch, pins bent just a touch so they pull smooth. I load the carbine and sling it tight. I put the rifle on my back. I tuck the last 2 rifle rounds into a pocket where I can get them without looking. I am not wasting one. The final push is a wall of motion. The infected on the north edge suddenly coordinate in lines. The front line throws bodies into the wire. The second line climbs that heap. The third line runs across the backs. It is awful. It is also effective. The machine guns bowl whole sections over, but fresh bodies replace the fallen with no pause. I pick the ones who keep the rhythm. I slow them with headshots, but more step up and keep the pace. The wire gives. The fence groans. The posts lean. The first infected drops onto the inner grass. Then the second. Then the line breaks and the lawn fills. Ground units fall back to a second ring around the residence and the main offices. Shotgun blasts thump. Belt-fed guns at the doors hammer until the barrels glow. Smoke canisters hiss and spill white clouds that hide movement. The infected cough and stumble, then push through anyway, eyes wide, mouths open. They do not care what is in the air. They care where bodies are, our bodies. I shoot the last organizer I can find through the haze. I wait 5 seconds. No one takes his place. Good. I shoot a climber scaling the tower leg. Bad. 2 more are close behind him. I take one. The other swings onto the ladder and shifts weight like a man who has worked construction. That detail hits me like a hammer. He is not mindless. He is using hands and feet with precision. I pull the trip line without thinking. The flare hisses and throws red fire in his face. He drops 1 rung. He does not flinch. He climbs again. I kick the ladder hard with my boot. It bangs. He keeps climbing. I pull the pin on 1 grenade and roll it off the platform. He looks up and opens his mouth like he is about to shout. The blast knocks him off the ladder and scatters the ones crowding below. I light the first fuse. It sputters and burns with a steady hiss. I light the second. I check the speed with my watch. I have 1 minute to get down and out before the legs break. I take one last look through the scope. The flagpole is at a bad angle now. The lawn is gone under feet and bodies and gear. Marines fall back in tight steps. A medic throws his last pack into a doorway and stands aside to clear the line. No one looks up. No one looks at me. Good. I lower through the hatch, swing down onto the rungs, and pull the hatch shut. The sound changes to a dull rumble. I slide into the maintenance corridor and move fast but careful. The floor is slick with oil in spots. The air is warm. The lights buzz and flicker. I pass the generator room. The door is wedged open with a pipe. A mechanic lies on the floor with his face turned away. I do not check for breath. I do not have seconds for that. I step over a wrench and a spilled coffee. The corridor leads to a junction. Left is storage. Right is the service tunnel. I go right. The door at the end is heavy and painted a tired grey. I press the bar. It opens. My route stays good. I slip into the tunnel, which smells like damp concrete and old paint. A single bulb burns every 10 yards. The light is yellow and weak. Water drips somewhere beyond the next bend. I keep the carbine up and the rifle snug. Behind me, the charges go. The sound rolls through the tunnel like a freight car. Dust floats in the light and hangs there. I feel grit on my tongue. The tower will be down. That corner of the defense will look broken and sharp. It will not slow the mass for long, but it will punch a hole in that flow and make some of them pause. That is all I needed. I clear the first bend and almost trip over a body. A worker in a blue jumpsuit lies curled by a valve wheel. The skin on his knuckles is torn. He tried to close the valve. He did not finish. His eyes are open. His mouth is slightly open. I stand still and watch for a full count of 5. No movement. I step around him and keep going. Halfway down, I hear feet in the tunnel behind me. Not running, dragging. I turn and shine my light low. Something moves in the dust and a shape shows in the beam. It is small. A teenager maybe, clothes torn, hands out, face slack. It sees the light and takes 2 fast steps that are not random. I do not wait to see if this one speaks. I do not ask questions. I put a round into the bridge of the nose. The body drops. I move again. The tunnel splits again at a heavy door with a yellow stripe. The left branch goes toward the street. The right branch leads to a maintenance yard I know is probably gone. I go left. The door is locked with a bar and chain. I cut the chain with a small bolt cutter from the pouch I took off a dead engineer on day 3. The cutter snaps loud enough to make my jaw clench. I open the door and step into a stairwell that smells like bleach and wet stone. Up the stairs, through another door, and I am in a service room with a mop sink and a shelf of old paint. The windows are painted shut. I smash one with the butt of the carbine and brush glass out with my sleeve. Outside is an alley that runs behind a row of offices. The fence beyond is topped with coils of wire that look tired and loose. The alley itself is empty for 10 long seconds. Then a shape moves at the far end and locks on me with a tilt of the head that says, "This is not a stray dog." I climb through the window and drop to the pavement. I run the alley at a steady pace, not a sprint. Sprinting brings mistakes. I get to the fence, throw my coat over the wire, and climb. The coat snags and tears. I go over anyway and drop into a pile of cardboard and old pallets. Something in my shoulder bites. I grunt, roll, and get up. The shape in the alley is running now. I do not shoot. I do not have time or rounds. I cut across the next street and into shade. The shape hits the fence and climbs badly. That buys me what I need. I do not look back until I reach a side door of a closed cafe. The glass is cracked but still in the frame. I pry it and slip inside. The air smells like coffee that died yesterday and bleach that did not. I step behind the counter, grab a trash bag, and fill it with water bottles and a box of protein bars stacked under the register. I take a strip of duct tape from a roll and seal the bag to my belt. I hear distant shots. Not many. Maybe 2 posts left somewhere. Maybe the last belt on a door gun. The city is not quiet, but the old rhythm is gone. I move out the back and cut through a loading bay to a narrow street lined with dumpsters. A cat shoots out from under a pallet and vanishes under a truck. I flinch and then laugh once without sound. The laugh dies as I step into open ground and see smoke rising behind the trees on the south grounds. The smoke is wrong. It is not a controlled burn. It is a mess. I look for a path that does not trap me. The first choice is wrong. The second choice looks better. I take it. By the time I reach the river, the day has shifted to late. The water pulls at the light and makes it look older. I keep moving along the edge, keeping a wall on one side and the open water on the other to reduce angles of approach. 2 infected see me from a boardwalk and start to jog along the top of the railing like gym rats showing off. I drop one with a carbine shot to the sternum just to knock him off his line, and then put a second round where it needs to go. The second missteps and falls. He cracks his head on the rail. He twitches and does not get up. I do not waste another round. I find a maintenance shed by the river with the door half open. Inside is a coil of rope, a box of nails, and a folded tarp. I take the rope and tie the tarp into a roll I can carry. If it rains tonight, I am not sleeping wet. If I sleep at all, I sit with my back to the wall for 1 minute and let my breath settle. I do not close my eyes. The rifle sits across my knees. The carbine leans against my shoulder. The water moves. The city sounds turn. I listen for rotors. I hear none. I listen for engines. None. I hear 2 shots in the distance, and then nothing. I think back through the 7 days in small, clean pieces I can carry without dropping. The first woman biting a stranger, the new rules of engagement, the grinders screaming, and the hordes arriving, the climber who used webbing with purpose, Lewis asking for the headset and giving me orders with a steady voice, the letter that told me to remain until rounds were gone, the flagpole tilting in the corner of my scope, while a squad fought for air 60 yards to the right and needed my rounds more than any symbol did, the charges cutting the tower legs, the hatch opening, the tunnel light, the drag of steps behind me, the teenager's face in my light, blank and hungry, not alive, not gone. I do not talk about honor or betrayal. That language is for podiums and plaques, and none of those exist tonight. I talk about choices that keep a person breathing, and choices that trade 1 life for 3. I talk about putting bullets where they matter, and leaving the rest when you cannot help without losing more. I talk about carrying names in my head with clean edges, not as ghosts but as facts. Lewis, the runner with the torn ear, the mechanic by the valve wheel, the medic with the empty bag who still moved door to door with his back straight, the marine who smashed a truck light to get the driver's attention because a flashlight would have cost him a hand. The White House is behind me. It is not a building right now. It is a mark on a map that tells any survivor where not to go for a while. It drew the infected first with the crowd, then with the noise, then with the smell of fuel and hot metal. It drew the intelligent ones with challenge and the mindless ones with sound. It held for 7 days. Then it fell. That is the truth. You can layer a speech on top of it or cut it into a recruitment video, but the shape under the words stays the same. I drink half a bottle of warm water and chew a bar that tastes like chalk and sugar. I clean the carbine bolt face with a strip of shirt. I check the rifle glass and wipe dust from the edges with slow swipes so I do not grind grit into the coating. I count rounds again. I have enough to move through a few more bad spots and not enough to start a fight. That is fine. I am not starting anything tonight. I pack the tarp and rope into the bag and tie it across my chest. I stand and listen. The city answers with a low hum that sounds like dead air. I move when the light goes grey. I keep buildings on my left and the river on my right. I step with care, not slow, not rushed. A dog barks from a balcony and a shape lurches into a doorway, then stops. The dog barks again. A window slams. I cut across a parking lot and slip behind a dumpster when a small group of infected jogs by, with a rhythm too clean to be random. I hold still until they pass, then angle away from their path and keep moving. I do not know where the president is. I do not know where the cabinet is. I do not know which officers from those 7 days made it across a fence or a street. I know my hands still work. I know the rifle still shoots. I know I will put rounds where they matter until the bag is empty, and then I will use the rope and the knife and whatever else I can lift. This is not stubborn pride. This is habit and training, and the plain urge to see another sunrise. If someone ever asks why I left a post with orders in my pocket, I will tell that person to climb that tower and sit through those 7 days, and then ask again. If the answer still matters after that, I will say it out loud without flinching. I was ordered to hold until my ammunition was gone. The ammunition that mattered was the ammunition I could still place where it saved a life. At 3 in the afternoon on day 7, shots from that tower could not save anyone inside the ring. They could save one person only. Me. I used that chance. I took the charges with me. I did not leave a gift for the infected. I left a hole to slow them for a handful of seconds, while I moved to ground that gave me a future. I step into a side street with brick on both sides, and a single light hanging dead from a wire. The street smells like wet cardboard and diesel that sat too long. I move down the center to keep space on both sides. A sound from behind makes me spin. A man steps into view with his hands up. He is thin and dirty, and his eyes dart to the rifle and back to my face. He says he is not sick. He says he will carry water or hold a door if I let him walk with me. I look at his hands. no tremor, no twitch. His skin is grey with dust, not fever. He is breathing steady. I tell him to keep 5 steps back and to not talk unless I ask a question. He nods and falls in behind me with quiet feet. We cross 2 blocks without contact. The man says he was on the mall when the first scream started. He says he ran until his legs failed and slept under a table in a museum cafe. He says he woke to a pounding on the glass and knew he would not live if he stayed. He asks if the White House is safe. I tell him it is not. He looks at the ground and nods. He does not cry. He does not complain. Good. We angle toward a neighborhood where federal workers rent basements to interns in summer. Those basements might still have canned food if no one cleaned out every shelf in a panic. The man asks if I have a plan beyond food and water. I say I am heading south and west to the Beltway, and then out to a smaller town with a water tower and a firehouse. He asks why that spot. I tell him firehouses have gear that makes life easier, and towers have stairs that can be held. He nods again. He is not dumb. A fast infected bursts from a doorway on my left and slams into my shoulder before I can turn the muzzle. The hit is full body and ugly. The carbine snaps sideways on its sling and cracks the brick. I jam my forearm into the infected's face and shove. The smell of old sweat and rot hits hard. The man behind me shouts and swings a chunk of pipe that came from somewhere. He hits the infected across the side of the head. The infected's neck snaps and he staggers. I pull the knife from my chest rig and drive it into a spot that ends fights. The infected drops. I kick him twice to be sure. The man stands with the pipe up and his mouth open and no sound coming out. I tell him to breathe and watch the street. He breathes and watches. We move. We find a basement door with a cheap lock and a window too small for a person. I pick the lock with a tool I keep in my shirt pocket because old habits do not fade. We go inside and shut the door. The air smells stale and cold. The room holds boxes of old clothes and 2 cases of bottled water. We drink and do not talk. My hands shake. His hands shake. I do not call it fear. I call it body shock and leave it at that. We eat 2 cans of beans without heat and split a pack of dry crackers. I find a first aid kit with real gauze and a roll of tape and fix the bite of wire on my shoulder from the fence. The blood is surface only. It stings. It is fine. We sleep in shifts. I go first with the rifle across my chest and wake to a quiet room and the man sitting with the pipe across his lap, eyes on the door. He did not run. He did not steal my rifle. He did not panic. I nod and take the second watch. He sleeps with little noises that sound like someone trying to pull air through a straw. I do not wake him. Morning comes grey and thin. We rise, pack, and step out into a city that is not dead but is not alive in any way that made sense a week ago. If anyone asks what I saw through that scope over 7 days, I will tell the story without decoration. I saw a crowd breaking into panic in minutes. I saw a pathogen turn compassion into attack. I saw police and marines hold a line past reason. I saw engineers hammer steel into place and weld as if time were a solid thing you could nail to the ground. I saw infected climb with tool use and balance. I saw others fling themselves at wire and concrete until the barrier turned into a ramp. I saw a flag tilt and a tower come down. I heard a friend ask me to do what he could not do for himself, and I did it. I read an order that told me to die on schedule for a camera shot, and I declined. The world did not end in a day. It took 7 long days full of small choices that lined up like bricks. I stacked my bricks where they would carry weight and then I walked. I did not leave that yard clean. I left it loud. I left charges that would slow the first climb and bring a few more down so the ones on the ground could step back and breathe twice. That is what I could give. That is what I gave. Now I move with a new pace. Not a soldier on a post, a shooter with a bag, a partner with a pipe, and a route that bends around noise instead of toward it. I am not proud. I am not ashamed. Those words need pageantry I do not have time for. I am focused. I am angry enough to keep moving. I know where I will go next. And if that place holds, I will dig in and make it hold longer than common sense predicts. That is who I am. That is what people like me are for when papers and seals do not mean much anymore. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the stories alive. For now, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and stay alive. Jack's Nightmares, signing off. Until next time, survivor.